Welcome to the StockMentor.com studios here in the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. I'm your stock mentor, Brian Johnson, and I'm making professional trading simple. And let's move on and talk about the next subject, which will be all about support and resistance. You will hear this thrown around a lot as well in the trading world, very important to know about. And that is what are areas or lines of support and what are areas and lines of resistance. So let's go into what that is today. Now we're back on the Dow Jones chart, which we used in the last video. For simplicity's sake, this has some very good information in it that we can look at. Now, what we want to look at is areas of support, areas of resistance. So where do we find these? Well, the best place to look for these is at swing highs and swing lows. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our first swing high, and that would be right here, actually. So now, if we go to the top of this swing high, and let's go ahead and I'm going to drop in what's called a line, a support resistance line, okay? And you can see as I pull that up, there were a couple from before that I left in there. But let's go ahead and put one right about up in here. Okay, if we drop that line in at the top of a swing high and follow it over, you can see that it creates a line of, at this point, resistance. See how the stock came up and hit this line and hit it again and almost kind of hit it there and then hit it here again before falling back? This line is acting as resistance. It's resisting the stock from going higher. Okay, so now it pulls back, it gets another run at it, and it wham, slams its head again into resistance, pulls back one more time, and this time is able to break through. So now what happens? It goes running up, comes back down, and look at that. On this candle here, it touches that line and bounces back up. Now this line, instead of acting as resistance, is acting as support. Make sense? So that's support and resistance in a nutshell. Now, it's very common for previous resistance to become support and for previous support to then become resistance. What do we mean by that? Well, this was a perfect example. See how it was resistance down here? Once we broke through and came back and retested it, it became an area of support. Unfortunately, it did not last very long. For the next day, it blew right through it. It comes back down into this line, which we're going to get to in a second, but this is now becoming a line of support. And it flows back up. Where does it hit its head? Isn't that strange? It came right back up to this line that goes back to here. See how that line is acting as resistance? Now this stock could have come up into here and turned around. It could have come up into here, turned around, here, anywhere. It could have come up in, but it didn't. It follows these lines of support and resistance. All stocks will do this. Okay? And by establishing, finding, and recognizing these areas of support and resistance, once again, you can greatly increase your chances, your probabilities of a successful trade by looking for this. Okay? So now we break through support. We come back up and test it. Now it's again, what? Yes, resistance. Now we start to fall again. Okay, so let's look at one more line. Let's go back and look at this line. This line here was, first of all, we had a swing high here, so we put a line up here at the top of the swing high. Then we have a swing low here, right? So once we established a swing low, we put a little line at the bottom of that swing low. And you can see that it came down, sat on top of this. Okay, actually, if I extend this over, you can find that it almost ends up right over in this area here at this swing low. See this little tiny swing low? It comes down, retests that level, breaks back up, comes back down, and then what does it do? It retests this line again. Now it's acting as support. See how it held support, held support. Here it kind of broke down, but the next day it did not confirm, and it moved back up through support. Now we're up and through. Now we're back down again, and it's kind of, playing around with this area. But once it breaks back up, it comes back up here, hits resistance, falls back down, lands right on support. The next day, it ends up below, closing below the support line. So now this tries to come back up and can't do it. Now this line becomes resistance. And once again, the following day starts at resistance and blows downwards. So there are lines of support and resistance. Okay? As you can see from this, that's what you're looking for in your trading. It's very important that you find these levels and try to establish them within your trading charts in order to give yourself an idea of, okay, once this stock breaks through resistance, I wait for it to come back and test it to see if it'll actually hold as support. Resistance becomes support. Support becomes resistance. So there's your quick lesson today, all about support and resistance. Once again, extremely helpful and extremely useful in your trading. These are also items I go over pretty heavily in my mentoring classes. And so I think we'll end this video with that and move on to the next one. So there's your areas of support and resistance, and a very basic way on how to find them. I go into greater detail in my mentoring classes, but this gives you a very good idea of what support and resistance is. And you'll notice that it's very important to a trader's toolbox. It's one more tool that a trader can use to successfully set themselves up for a successful trade.